Hey! Hey, everyone! Wow, okay, so what if I told you that stupidity isn't just like the absence of intelligence, but something way, way more insidious, like a force that can twist brilliant minds into tools of destruction? And what if the biggest threat to us all isn't, evil people doing evil things, but just ordinary folks who've kinda stopped thinking? It's a chilling thought, right? I'm Olympia, and I am so incredibly glad you're here. Seriously, to everyone who keeps coming back, thank you. It means the world, and really helps this whole thing grow, And if you're new, hey, welcome. I hope you stick around. Today, we're diving into something that, honestly, it's been rattling around in my head for weeks. Dietrich Bonhoeffer and his theory of stupidity. So grab your coffee or tea or whatever you've got. Settle in, because this is a big one. It touches all of us. Think about it for a sec. A super smart scientist, PhDs galore, suddenly pushing dangerous misinformation. A kind teacher endorsing hateful ideas. A loving parent making choices that put their own kids at risk. These aren't like cartoon villains. They're intelligent, often well-meaning people who've fallen for what Dietrich Bonhoeffer called the power of stupidity. And the truly terrifying part? It's not happening to some other people. It's happening to people just like you and me. And this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. Nope. Back in 1961, Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments at Yale. Ordinary people, told by an authority figure to give what they thought were increasingly painful electric shocks to someone else. And even with screams of agony, 65% of them delivered shocks they believed could be lethal. These weren't sadists. They were normal people who just temporarily shut down their own moral compass. This is exactly what Bonhoeffer saw firsthand in Nazi Germany. It pushed him to develop one of the most unsettling theories about us humans, ever. But before we get deeper, let me ask you, have you ever caught yourself believing something just because everyone around you did? Keep that in mind. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he wasn't your typical ivory tower philosopher. He was a German Lutheran pastor who watched his whole society just transform. Born into this super intellectual family in 1906, he had every reason to believe in education, in rational thought. But as the Nazis rose to power, he saw something that just shattered that faith. He saw educated, cultured, religious people, his peers, start backing policies and leaders that went against everything they claimed to believe. These weren't ignorant masses. These were professors, doctors, clergy, actively taking part in their own intellectual surrender. And this, for me, this is the absolute core, the hyper-focused gem of it all. From his prison cell in 1943, waiting for execution for being part of a plot to assassinate Hitler, Bonhoeffer wrote his most haunting observation. He said, "Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protests nor the use of force accomplish anything here. Reasons fall on deaf ears." But here's the kicker, the part that gives me chills. Evil, he noted, always carries the seeds of its own destruction. It makes people uneasy. It breeds resistance. But stupidity? Stupidity genuinely believes it's doing good, and that makes it absolutely immune to correction. Wow. Just let that sink in. Immune because it thinks it's virtuous. That's a terrifying power. Bonhoeffer realized that stupidity, or what we might call functional stupidity, it's not about low IQ. It's when people aren't thinking for themselves, when they're just parroting slogans and catchphrases that have taken them over. He argued it often comes from these huge systemic pressures that make thinking independently really hard and really costly. Our economic systems, they kinda incentivize intellectual shortcuts. Social media platforms. They thrive when we react emotionally, not critically. Politicians? Simple slogans often win over complex policies. When people are stressed, overworked, drowning in debt, just bombarded with info, intellectual surrender can feel like a survival strategy. It's what economists call rational ignorance. It feels more efficient to stay uninformed on complex stuff than to invest the energy to truly get it. But that individual rationality creates this massive collective irrationality. That's what Bonhoeffer saw. And our brains? They're kind of wired to comply, especially under stress. Cognitive dissonance, right? When info clashes with our beliefs, our brains fight it. And this whole process gets amplified when we're stressed, overwhelmed, or insecure. Bonhoeffer also nailed it when he said stupidity is often a sociological problem, not just a psychological one. Smart individuals in a group, they can totally abandon critical thinking. We see it with conformity experiments, people agreeing with obviously wrong answers just to go with the crowd. Now, amplify that with today's social media echo chambers, where false info can spread like wildfire because it often feels more emotionally satisfying than complicated truths. It's like an architecture of chosen ignorance. Think about history. Salem witch trials, the Red Scare. Intelligent, often God-fearing or patriotic people, abandoning critical thought for group consensus and emotional certainty. So, if our brains and our systems are kinda rigged against us, how do we fight back? Bonhoeffer talked about costly grace, being willing to think for yourself even when it's painful or unpopular. On an individual level, it's about intellectual humility, knowing you don't know everything. Actively seek out stuff that contradicts your beliefs, not to torture yourself, but to test if they're solid. Practice intellectual friction. Ask, what evidence would change my mind? If you can't think of any, that's a red flag. Slow down your sharing online. Take 60 seconds to verify. And oh my gosh, this is a big one. Practice saying, I don't know, when you genuinely don't. It's radical in a world that rewards loud, confident ignorance. But it's not just on us as individuals. We need structural changes. More transparency from social media platforms about their algorithms. Better media literacy for everyone. And, crucially, economic policies that reduce the everyday stress that makes us so vulnerable to these intellectual shortcuts. When people aren't constantly worried about basics, they have more brain space for complex thinking. Bonhoeffer saw propaganda via newspapers and radio. We're facing something exponentially more powerful. Algorithms that know our psychological buttons, and now AI deepfakes that can literally fabricate reality. This isn't just about external manipulation anymore. It's targeting how our brains are fundamentally wired for speed over accuracy, for trust in the familiar. We saw it during COVID, right? Smart, analytical people sharing debunked theories. It wasn't a failure of intelligence. It was a failure of intellectual independence under immense pressure. Bonhoeffer paid the ultimate price for refusing to surrender his mind. He was executed just weeks before Germany surrendered. His last reported words? This is the end. For me, the beginning of life. He understood that when people stop thinking for themselves, they stop being fully human. They become puppets. His final challenge to us, so relevant today, is: who stands fast when the pressure to conform is overwhelming? When thinking for yourself takes courage? The answer isn't about being smarter. It's in the daily choice to stay curious, to seek truth over comfort, to think carefully. The tragedy is, intellectual surrender often feels like liberation. Thinking is hard, but Bonhoeffer argued that discomfort is the price of staying human. So, the moment you think you're immune to functional stupidity, that's when you've started to succumb. It whispers that you already know everything. Here's the hope, though. If stupidity is partly chosen, it can be rejected. If it's partly structural, structures can be changed. If it's overwhelm, we can create conditions for clearer thinking. Critical thinking is like a muscle. It needs exercise. So, the next time you're absolutely certain, next time you dismiss contradictory evidence, next time you feel that comfort of having all the answers, remember Bonhoeffer. Will you choose the comfort of certainty or the harder path of intellectual independence? It's not about whether we're smart enough. It's whether we're committed enough to keep thinking when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or costly. In a world that profits from our intellectual surrender, choosing to think carefully and independently becomes one of the most important things we can do. Here's my challenge to you this week. Find one belief you hold strongly and spend just 30 minutes researching the best arguments against it. Not to tear yourself down, but to practice that intellectual courage Bonhoeffer died for. If your belief holds up, amazing. If not, you've learned something vital. If this has made you question something, anything, that's not weakness. That's the start of intellectual courage. Share this with someone who isn't afraid to think deeply, even when it's tough. And if you appreciate this kind of exploration and want to support the channel, I've set up a Buy Me a Coffee. The link's in the description. Every little bit helps me keep these deep dives going, and I'm so grateful. So, here's the question I want to leave you with. Something to really chew on. What's one belief you're willing to truly question this week? Let me know in the comments. Let's commit, together, to be the kind of people who stand fast, who keep thinking, when maybe, just maybe, everyone else has stopped. What do you say?